Today on Switch to Linux, we want to talk about some of those warnings of using apps for everything, particularly things with a lot of detailed personal information. And over the course of 2024, I logged all of my cash expenses to show you a little bit better way to some of the budgeting apps, which are collecting a lot of data with some fairly dubious terms, and having that information all on a centralized database for a company, that's a little sketch. So we'll show you a little bit better of a way. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like and a comment down below. And what we want to chat about today goes back to an article we covered back in October of 2023. That is actually how long I was collecting data for this. Believe it or not, I do sometimes plan ahead. I know, who'd have thunk it? But we covered this article after the FTC warns about misuse of confidential data. Senators Warren, Wyden, and lawmakers demand answers from tax prep companies on abuses of taxpayer privacy. And what I had commented on at the time was this bold quote down here. The lawmakers wrote in their letters to H&R Block, TaxSlayer, Tax Act, and Ramsey Solutions, like Dave Ramsey Solutions, that's an interesting one, that accordingly, we write this to confirm, in accordance with the FTC notice and penalty offenses, your company is not engaged and will not be eligible will not be engaged in any further abuses of the taxpayer policy. Now, what this dealt with is that looking at what was going on, tax preparation companies were sending data up to Facebook and Google. Why were they doing this? Were this like, these guys are just like unscrupulous? No, it's just sheer ignorance, mostly. It's nothing bad necessarily on any of their behalfs. They're just like, hey, we are doing, H&R Block. They do taxes for people. You see them set up their little corner in Walmarts. Tax Act, TaxSlayer. These are big corporate companies. Dave Ramsey, of course, is involved in a lot of finance stuff. So, of course, he would do something. I believe his is a white label on TaxSlayer, if I remember correctly. And so TaxSlayer basically writes software, gives it to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey's a big financial guy. People contact him around tax time. What do we do about taxes? Wouldn't it be really cool if Dave Ramsey could say, use our tax preparation software? So, they don't develop it in-house. They went out to a company. They probably got bids from Intuit and H&R Block and TaxSlayer gave them the best one, and they were able to just give them their software, white labeled. They can slap their name on it and distribute it. And the thing about, TaxSlayer's not writing their own software. They're hiring geeks to do it. And every one of these geeks don't have any issue or quabble or even thought or concern about sharing data. They just know they create these apps, and these apps happen to have a bunch of libraries. They dump in the libraries that they barely know what they do. And it just turns out that many of these libraries contain things like meta tracking pixels, Google Analytics pixels. They tie them in because, of course, you need data about what's going on with your app. Duh. The problem is that these in-depth tracking pixels embedded in software and in phone apps, these collect a lot of information. They use session replay, and they can record real identifiable personal information sent right back. And if the person utilizing those accounts know what they're doing, they can extract a lot of real personal data. Even in the latest Google Analytics 4.0, this is, the privacy honoring stuff. No, it's not. I mean, I've seen it myself. We have companies that we run Google ads, and if a person clicks on a Google ad, goes through, purchases an item, we get a conversion tracker, and wouldn't you know it, all of that information is available on the store information we have to collect their payment and their address for shipping information, and we can get the exact information, click that back through, and see everything else that person has seen. This is all stuff, and I'm not an expert in this. This is all stuff that is available for the people who know what they're doing. And as an app comes down and they start utilizing these things, a lot of these apps have trackers embedded in them. Even if it's not the Facebook and the analytics trackers, they are all collecting a lot of information. And even though all of these privacy policies say, we won't share anything without your explicit consent, they interpret the explicit consent is the I agree button when you first installed the app. And that's really where the problem was. And so looking at an article from a year prior to that, This is from tax filing websites have been sending users financial information to Facebook. Of course, this one here mentions H&R Block, Tax Act, TaxSlayer, Ramsey Solutions will be caught up in this one as well. This is from the year prior where this was first identified that these companies on their back end had Facebook tracking IDs. And so now FTC is starting to crack down on this, which is a good thing. But the problem is a lot of these the libraries for the phone apps are doing a lot of similar things. And so we saw information being sent back to these companies. So Ninth Wave, new research findings on data privacy and financial app usage. This one looked at 2021 Consumer Survey, data privacy, and financial app usages, as a lot of people are concerned about finances. A lot of people are. It is one of the most profitable places in the YouTube community. If you want to get in and start an amazing, fast-growing channel that makes a lot of money, a higher CPC value than most other YouTube channels, financial stuff. And then they're all embedded with all sorts of the apps and the recommendeds, programs and the affiliate deals and all the things. And the fact of the matter is money is so sensitive of a topic, people will do anything that they can to get a leg up on money. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here. So what they variously found in here, though, is that they said 73% of app users are unaware that fintech apps have access to their bank account username and password. Yeah, if when you use these, you have to approve the connection to your bank so they can. Basically, all these apps are doing is you're connecting your bank. They go into your bank and they grab information. If you take your credit card statements or your bank statements or however you're doing things that aren't just handing physical cash back and forth, they can see those receipts and make guesses about what you're doing. If it's a gas station, obviously it's a gas expense. I don't know how they manage like going into like a Sheetz, a Wawa, or a Buc-ee's. I bought a brisket sandwich and that's fuel, man. It's fuel for me at least. This explains my big gut. Actually it's the Krispy Kreme donut visits you'll see later on in the video, but whatever. But people are unaware that these apps have access to every transaction going in and out. Of course, it was released a number of years ago that Google and Facebook get access to that same information without you even providing any consent. They just do it. It's their way of making sure that their ads are working properly. 80% of fintech app users are largely unaware apps use third-party providers to gather their data. Yeah, I was reading one of them today. It's like, hey, you connect our information. Well, we're using Plaid. Well, now you have to trust not only the company you're giving access to, you have to trust Plaid and your bank. There's now 3 separate institutions you have to trust with all of this financial data. And of course, every one of them uses other third-party contractors. And we know from reports, third-party contractors is typically where the weakness is. 78% of people did not know aggregators regularly access personal data, even when the app is closed or deleted. And only 24% know these data aggregators can sell personal data to other parties for marketing, research, and other purposes. And we'll see some of that in some of these privacy policies. They say, though app users give their credentials as part of the sign-up process, most do not realize the information being stored by a third party, such as the aggregator. Even if one does read the terms and conditions, 77% admitted to not reading them. What is the alternative? Well, I'm going to show you a free and open source offline alternative at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. And of course, this is from USA Today. Finance apps can be great for budgeting, but beware of hungry hackers. It's not just hungry hackers, though. So this is from last year, July of 2024. Americans are increasingly using financial apps to manage their money, but they need to be careful at which ones they choose. Obviously, some of them have a little bit higher security and recommendations. Some of them, though, they're fly by night. Some of them are manufactured by individual people. So it says in here, look at reputation, look at their encryption and their privacy policies, and look at what they're doing on all the security and making sure you're doing your own security protocols as well. And then, of course, from Reader's Digest, September of 2024, so almost a year ago, if these apps are still in your phone, someone may be spying on you. So they go in here and just look at a couple of different apps. they talk about how, of course, remember like Life 360, Gas Buddy was a popular one being pushed around by people, a number of other ones. These all had trackers embedded that were owned by Allstate, who is turning around selling these to another data broker who is selling your gyroscopic speed, acceleration, deceleration data to your insurance company a few years ago. And this is why one of the reasons insurance rates went all wonky a few years ago, because they collect all of this data from all of these apps people installed. And I'm wondering if the reason my rates went up so high 1 year, well, obviously no issues, no incidents, no anything else, my rates 1 year almost doubled. And I actually think the reason is I don't install apps on my phone, and I had a big hole in the data where everybody else was reporting data. Like, I don't know what to do about this guy. Let's call him high risk. We don't know. We can't track what he's doing. I mean, that's possibly what happened. So, of course, here's your cam scanner or any weather app. Of course, these are full of craziness. Like, well, how am I going to check the weather? I'll tell you how I do it here on my Graphene OS phone. First, all the weather stuff is routed through the Tor network. And then I use Firefox Focus. You go to the weather channel, select the area that you want. You hit the button at the top to say, add this to your home screen. And now if I just go into my Graphene OS phone there is a little W right here, and it simply opens up a Tor window that loads the weather channel at my location. Now it will take a second to load. Oh, there it is. See, look, I don't have an app. This is all being done on Firefox Focus, which does not have the trackers embedded through the Tor network. I don't need an app, folks. You can still put it on your home screen. Get them things off. Of course, Facebook. Who would have thought that Facebook was collecting your data? Flashlight app. Angry Birds, Zombie Mod. Are people still using these things? DoorDash, of course, any dating apps, children's apps. Yeah, keep those children's apps off your phone. Ring doorbell app. And down here at the very bottom, I love this one. Every app, every time. Yes. Apps are a backdoor to put data trackers on your individual devices. And so when we see, particularly in the financial YouTube sector, and people are like, use this new app, it's free. Everyone's, it's free, man, it's free. It's all these free apps, free. Oh, these guys are just altruistic, multi-billion-dollar companies, global national corporations that are just out of the goodness of their heart giving you all this free access. Oh no. It doesn't cost you dollars up front, but you got to connect through their third-party services. You got to subscribe to their terms of service, even though every one of them says, we do not share any data without your explicit consent. The problem is they define that I accept on the first installation as explicit consent. So yes, every one of these apps that I have looked at is sharing information. There's one that looks a little safer, but even that, no, I don't doubt it. So of course, Pocket Guard. This is the first one of these I see. This was a highly rated one. Now, let me say this before we get into all of these. The big problem with all of these apps, every single one of them, they're all like, this will help you budget. This will help you save money. This will help you move into retirement faster. That's the last one we're going to look at. It's going to make those crazy claims. The problem is all of these are applications which are tracking what you're doing after the fact. They are all ex post facto. And, this isn't like the Dave Ramsey approach where the beginning of the month, your paycheck hits, you go to the bank, you extract a lot of cash, you throw it into envelopes. Guess what? If you're sticking faithful to that, you're never overspending out of your planned budget because you have envelopes full of cash. Now, is that inconvenient? Yes. And do people stick to that perfectly? Generally, no. And so the whole facade here, the farce is you got to use this app and it's going to help you with everything. Well, the problem is the apps still are only telling you what you did, not telling you what you're going to do. And that's where the approach is. Even Dave Ramsey's $Every app. Use our Every app. It's the best budgeting app. It still does the same thing. It tells you what you've done, not planning what you're doing. Now, obviously, if you set your budgeting app to immediately extract money into savings first, so the money's not there, okay, that's pretty good. But, the fact of the matter is, you should be saving receipts. You should be looking at things. You should be reconciling your accounts pretty much every time you spend money. And that's something that what these bank apps all do, starting with this one here. You connect all of your all of your banks to it, and then they just go out and they're just using this API, constantly pinging your bank, and they're collecting information, and then they're showing you the basic categories that you're doing, and that's really what they're doing. So looking at Privacy Guard here, find confidence, your budget, your life, spend smarter, live better, join the 1 million+ members, trusted by the best. There you go. Everyone who's ever done a review of it is trusted by the best. It doesn't matter what that review happened to say. Of course, looking at, this is the worst one I looked at, privacy policy. Of course, you give the information we collect on obviously your account. They collect information with your bank account. I think this is the one that also uses Plaid. So now you have to agree with Plaid and all their third parties. Then they use third-party services for verifying who you are. They use third-party web beacons, and then they collect information from other sources, other third parties, credit bureaus, other things like this, and then information related to the use of the service, how you're using it, things like this, and then how we use the information. Yeah, this guy here, they're just feed it out the most. Primary goal is to have a secure, smooth, and customized experience to administer the use of the service. Oh yeah, that's our primary goal. Actually, the primary goal is to make some money. How do you make some money? Well, we do not share or use your information we have collected from or regarding you except as described below, right? Information shared with your financial advisor. If you click on the link to share your information with your financial advisor, he gets access to all your information as well. Information with our service providers. So we may engage third-party service providers who administer and provide services. Those third-party services, which, by the way, are the ones that we are warned are the ones that cause all form of data leaking. This is where most data breaches come from, as third-party services. Third-party services have access to your personal information and financial information, but only for the purpose of performing services on your behalf. And the fact we're underpaying them, they got the lowball contract, so they're probably skimming some off the bottom line so that they can sell some data for some extra cash. But, that's never happened before. Information with our marketing partners. How wonderful. You're sharing all your information with the marketing partners. At least these guys are telling you up front. Information shared with other third parties, aggregated and de-identified information, of course. Very easy to reconnect back together. Information disclosed with business transactions. Our protection or the protection of others. Pass-through requirements. So they may use services of certain third parties that require additional pass-through. So Salt Edge privacy policy, Pocket Guard agrees to include and abide to their privacy policies. Of course, there's all these other ones. You have some extra privacy policies depending on where you live. But of course, your choices is all opt out. So of course, you opt in when you click that accept. And, if you choose to opt out, things may or may not work as well. But that's kind of some of the stuff that we see. Of course, a big popular one was Mint, which they discontinued and moved everything over into Credit Karma. Now, this is an Intuit company, and Intuit owns a lot of different companies, and they own TurboTax, Credit Karma, QuickBooks, and MailChimp. Now, TurboTax is the one that they have said separately, since that collects information specifically for filing taxes. They actually say TurboTax is isolated in the data that they collect, but all of the other ones, QuickBooks, MailChimp, and Credit Karma, all of that data, if you use one of those services, all of the data you provide is pooled between all of the other services. And once again, it says here in their marketing stuff, your data works for you, the perks of the platform, it's all about privacy and blah, blah, blah. But when you get deeper into it, it's the same as pretty much anything else. They collect information, they use it for things that helps them out. There's your third-party sources, and then there's automatic data collection. Those are your standard ones, cookies, other similar technologies. And then how do they use the information to provide services to the Intel, run and manage our business, including revolving billing and financial. That makes sense if you're doing something that requires that, obviously. Evaluating your eligibility for marketing offers, products, and services. How wonderful. Providing features to you, such as free credit reports and scores, providing a product or service you've requested through the platform, connect you with experts and other users. So more marketing. Communicate to you. about your financial privacy, understanding your needs and interests, and personalizing your experience with services and communications. That's more marketing. Providing you with support and resolve disputes, authenticating your identity. And then, of course, R&D. Look at this. We may share your information for research and development. Research and development, this just goes out and getting it. Here's market and advertising. We, our service providers and our third-party advertising partners, may collect and use your information for marketing and advertising purposes. So you give it to MailChimp, or because some fool found your email address and pumped it into their MailChimp without your consent. Look at that. We have information about you in other places. Isn't that kind of cool? That's what they're doing. But this is Credit Karma. Of course, when Mint went down, a lot of people were trying to find alternatives. You got Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar app here collects a lot of extra information as well. Once again, this is an app that's just built with a bunch of libraries. Dave Ramsey is all about data collection and measuring analytics. They are a corporation. They try and say, oh, we're just a small business. They're a corporation. They're big. They have more than 500, more than 1,000 employees. They're a corporation. He wants to put on the small business facade. That's okay. But the fact of the matter is they behave like a corporation. They engage in the ugly corporate shell nonsense and things like that. And their app is not a lot different. It's going to collect data. It's going to sync to your bank accounts. They have a lot of the similar trackers, as was the concern. So this is the one that I found that looked on the surface to be the best. So again, though, it does all of the same things. It collects, it syncs into your bank accounts. You can see here it's sorting out gas, groceries, eating out, giving, things like that. Here's your savings, and then here's your estimated monthly income. So of course you have to have the discipline to pull up the app every single time you spend money. Otherwise, it's just doing the thing. Now, what they actually say here is they say no data is shared with third parties, but it does collect information, personal information, location information, things like that. So it says personal information, app information, financial information, precise location. I'm not sure why it needs to know that. But looking at their page, they are tied with a big conglomerate, but their privacy policy was the best of all the policies that I've read today. So your privacy information is never sold, rented for any reason. So here's the personal information that can identify you. It's used just for their basic things here. They keep it safe. They don't sell it. They say they don't sell or rent information. I don't know if they are running ads. If they are running ads, they're doing something. They do, however, use Amazon Web Services, Sendy for email, Plaid for the data connection, Zendesk for customer support, Google Voice for email, Discourse for forums, Stripe, and PayPal. Now, Stripe and PayPal are big at collecting a lot of data. But other than that, they don't seem to do that. They don't seem to do, let's see. They do technical information. I did not recall seeing anything about them for doing research and development. So they actually seem to be a little bit more reasonable. If I were forced to use one, I might go with that. Of course, the latest one that I saw is one of the guys I watch from time to time is working with Wi-Fi, and they want to come up with a Mint replacement that does all these types of things. Now, that guy says on his video this is going to be a free app, but the current versions of this still have a paid plan of $8.99 a month. But they have here, they want to replace Mint, which was discontinued by Intuit. They want to do budgeting, paying off debt, manage bills, save, goal planning, AI categorization. That's frightening. Bank sync and growing your wealth. And then they have the button here to join it. And there's really no other information. So I end up reading this guy here, Making Sense of Sense. It's a blog. Of course, this is supposed to be a review, and it's basically an advertisement. It goes through here, and we're working with them, but I've partnered with them, but all the pins are 100% my own. There's just like 700 bajillion links to go over and buy the service using her affiliate link, because this person is making money on referring this. So obviously I do not absolutely do not care what the opinion is about it. But I did click over here so I could actually get this really, really tiny font, find their privacy policy. And yeah, I'm not, it's not the worst, but it is not the best. Once again, they are using information. Here's blogs and forums, contests and giveaways. And I believe I think they had some things with research, market research as well. Let's see. Does this one have research in it? Yeah, here you go. Let's see. That says we do not sell trade information. We use and disclose your information only as follows: to analyze site usage and improve the service, deliver communications about your service, to fill your requests for market and product research, project planning, and troubleshooting. So you are still feeding the market research guys when you are using these particular services. And so I would not recommend utilizing this one either. And again, all of these things, every one of these guys, what they are going to be doing is they're going to be reaching into your bank account, looking at your transactions, and then basically organizing. So if it's a Walmart, it'd be like a general merchandise. Maybe it'll be groceries. If it sees a gas station, it's going to call it gas. If it sees a church on there, it's going to call it a giving or donations. You're going to see a movie theater. It's going to be, say, entertainment. So it's going to do these broad categorizations, which is not actually the most useful, not easily the best for budgeting, and doesn't have a lot of information that's particularly useful for you, but it's highly useful for the people that own these apps. Now, again, I was collecting data all through 2024 because of that article I did in 2023. And I was actually planning on releasing this video way earlier than this, but I just didn't get a chance to do all the research that I wanted to. But I'm going to jump on over to my other computer and I'm going to show you how I used KMyMoney to track data way better, completely offline, and get useful information. Now, all I did is doing better data tracking. I did not set up goals or plans. I did not sync my bank accounts. It was only a log of the actual cash I spent in dollar bills. It did represent, I would easily say, 90 to 95% of expenditures through that year that were not related to basically of consumer expenses. Buying food, gas, entertainment, things like that. It didn't include things like insurance or just other stuff like that. But I want to show you now how I set that up so you can see how we use that information to gather better information entirely offline, entirely with Linux, to actually get useful information. And who knows, maybe in a later video, we'll set up the whole thing up to do goal tracking as well and do that. And I think KMyMoney can connect it to bank accounts, but there's not a snowball's chance in hell I'm going to be doing that for obvious reasons. But maybe I can simulate that and show you guys how that works down the road if there is enough interest. So let's jump on over to the other computer and have a look. Utilizing KMyMoney, we can produce an entirely offline and completely private log with even more details. Remember, as the companies are gathering together your receipts, they're making guesses. They're saying, oh, you shopped at a grocery store, therefore this is food. And you shopped at a Best Buy, therefore this is electronics, or Netflix, therefore this is a subscription, or whatever they're going to categorize that as. But what I did here, which did not take a lot of time, it maybe 5 to 10 minutes after doing a grocery run, I simply separated out the receipts based on the types of categorizations, and I was able to build a ledger which gives me far more useful information than those companies have without sharing it with anybody. So it kind of starts with looking at the types of transactions and categories. Again, I could have done a whole lot better job at this. This just gives you a rough estimation. So I built these basic categories, dropped every type of purchase into these categories so that I could get some useful information. And some of these were built-in defaults. Some I deleted, some I just left alone. So like health, medical, I really don't spend a lot of money on a lot of these things. I included things like vitamins under a general health, medical. But under personal, you can see van expenses, something that went to the van. I had some miscellaneous other, gifts, fitness, gym, appearance, and grooming. Usually I added for that, like, soap or shampoo or things like that. Under fuel, you'll see I broke it down. Propane, this is what I would use to cook over my propane stove. Gas is generally what I'm using to drive around. Diesel is generally what I'm using to heat the van in the wintertime. Looking at the food, I looked at groceries. I said snacks. Now, this is one of my big limitations. I don't generally eat lunch, but I'll have something small as a snack. So pretty much if it's not a dinner food or a breakfast food, it got thrown into snacks. So that seems to be a really high category, even though some of that was like ramen noodles or other things that would possibly be considered more like a traditional lunch type thing. Paper products is paper towels, tissues. Miscellaneous is anything else. I might have actually put, I'm not sure what I put under health products there. Basic dinner foods, of course, coffee has its own. I actually put candy as its own, separating it from snacks. So if it was specifically candy like M&Ms or Skittles or something like that, it would go there, whereas like potato chips might go under snacks. And then your breakfast foods, I have one for dining out, one for clothing. Under the cat supplies, two basic things. What is cat food and cat pellets? I use equine horse pellets actually for kitty litter. Way better than cat food, by the way, or like cat litter. And so this is kind of what we see. So I go in and I go into my ledger and I say, okay, here's Walmart. And then I would go in here and I would basically take, in this case here, this would have been December 10th. And you can see Walmart, there's 3 different items. So I would take that Walmart receipt and look at everything I bought on there. And I would separate this out into the types of things. So I did cat food. There were some dinner food items that I bought and some paper products I bought at this particular trip to Walmart. So I took that receipt, separated it out into those different categories, and then I made a separate entry for each of those. And of course, the actual cost over here is, you can see everything here is just in straight dollars. So things are estimated. I didn't bother with, getting everything down to the penny amount. Basically do the same type of accounting the IRS does. Let's get rid of all these pennies. Let's estimate it as long as it was based on what my receipt had said. So I was able to do that. Here's a case with all these, the same thing. So this is a single trip to all these 3 different food categories. There's dinner foods, there's breakfast foods, and there's general snacks. So you can see I had $2 on snacks. I had $10 on breakfast-related foods, $5 on dinner-related foods. Now this allows me to go into one places I can go is I can come down here and let's look at Aldi, for example. These are all of the Aldi transactions and where they ended up coming from. You can see here's coffee, here's snacks, paper products, dinner foods, breakfast foods, the amounts that we have under each one of these. So this gives me a log of how many times I went to that particular store. Here's CVS. Let's see, camp supplies. Let's see, here's gas stations. Went to various gas stations, see how much I got. And most of these are going to be gasoline. Occasionally you might find one that was categorized into like propane or something. There's a Giant, there's a grocery store, there's a Golden Corral, there's a Harbor Freight. It's kind of sad to see. There's so many times I went to Krispy Kreme over that year. Ooh, Krispy Kreme, yummies. Here's McDonald's. Meteor Crater, that's under a national or like parks or general recreation otherwise. There you go, the Mothman Museum. Yeah, $11 Mothman Museum entry. So you can see here that I have a good handle on the amount of money that I'm spending on each one of these, but then I can go into my reports and I can get a lot more useful information. So over here, as my biggest expenditure was gas, a little over $2,000. This is miscellaneous other. Now, this was so high, I'm like, what was going on there? And if I looked at my miscellaneous under March, this is where most of this was at. I was like, what was going on there? Well, that was when I went into the pawn shops and I bought a computer for a friend to install Linux and ship it out. And I also bought a cell phone. So that's a computer and a cell phone is why that one is so high. That would be a weird year. Here's car maintenance type stuff, probably new tires, oil changes are going to fall under there. Here's basic dinner foods, dining out. That's actually high for me, but I do include going to a donut shop and sitting down and writing for an hour or using their internet as part of dining out. So not as high as, higher than I thought it would be, but not as high as it could have been. There's my snacks. Again, this is where the one where it could be, considered lunches or other things like that. And then you can kind of hover over each of these and see about how much you spend on each little individual spot. And then you also have more reports. And this is really where you can do a lot more breakdowns. Here's a per month breakdown. And here's just a total breakdown. So again, this experiment ran all of 2024 to collect the data utilizing mostly cash for all my expenditures. You can see here's the amount of cash used for actual business expenses. This would be things that I use without using my business debit cards, car maintenance, cat food supplies, cat pellets, a total of spend $172 per year on the cats. So, give me those super chats there in honor of the kitties so they can pay for their own way. There's clothing. Here's our overall food budget down there and the individual breakdowns, $100 on candy. Ooh, is that too much or too little? I don't know. Here's your fuel breakdowns. You can see $64 for cooking on propane over the year. And that's low because half the year where we get ample sun, I use electricity. The other half of the year where it's not as good as sun, I use propane. Diesel, $71 to heat the van. And then gasoline to drive around, just shy of $2,000. And then here's where you see some other expenditures there, things like that. So I can do a lot better breakdown. I can break things down into smaller subcategories that you don't get with these individual services. And everything here is offline on my own private computer. You can save it. You can back it up. Now, you can do a whole lot more with this application than I'm doing with it here. I just wanted to show you the data that you could get for just doing simple cash expenditures. And this does not take a lot of time to do. You might say, well, the other one's automatic. It is, and it's automatic and it's super convenient and it's giving all of your data to those other companies. In this case here, though, we have a situation where everything is local. I can customize my data reports. I can get the exact information that I need, and I can make these decisions without relying on these big tech companies harvesting all of my information and using it for marketing or whatever purposes they deem necessary. So hopefully that was useful information for you to gain a better handle on your finances without relying on all of these apps and giving all of this personal financial data out to all of these companies that are really doing nothing more than seeking to market to you. Once again, the power of Linux, the power of offline can help you in your budgeting goals. And who knows, maybe in a future video, we'll show you how to use KMyMoney, a little bit more advanced options to actually set goal planning and things like that. So let us know your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.